You know, let me begin by putting it into a certain context. When anyone speaks about the state of an economy, you're confronted right at the beginning, if you're honest, with an immense array of statistical information. It's a little bit like going to the doctor and saying you want an overview of how good your health really is. If the doctor is honest, the doctor will tell you, well, there's a million measurements I could take. Your blood, your stamina, your lymph nodes. I mean, it's an immense array. And you put yourself in the hands of a doctor. You want the doctor's judgment. What are the key variables to look at? And how do you balance what each one of those variables tells you? At any given moment, the human body has things in it that are going in a direction that is not good. And there are things in it which are doing well and are doing fine. And you need the judgment of the doctor to give you a sense of where it nets out. Well, I'm in the same position. And I say that because I want you to know that the level of inequality in society is an extremely important and significant variable in the way I look at the economy, but it differs from other economists who range from people who give it no importance to people who give it a little and a little more and so on. But I give it a lot. Therefore, I'm here to say that contrary to the clip you just showed, we weren't making improvements that were then disrupted by the pandemic. Sure, the line is not a straight line, it wobbles around. But the direction has been the same for the last 35 years, namely growing inequality. If you did a look comparing the United States with Western Europe at the end of World War II, you would have seen that the United States was a less unequal economy in terms of the ratio of rich people to the middle to the bottom. And we are now way number one. We have shot ahead of all the other European countries to become one of the most unequal economies in the world. That has been true across Republican and Democratic presidencies, Republican and Democratic Congresses, policy changes of this sort and that, but one of the most stunning constants has been the relentless worsening of the inequality. And I would argue that that reality is deeply affecting, or maybe I should use the word infecting, the rest of the economy. It seems to me that there are the usual candidates for this situation. Number one, there is the turmoil. There's no other way I can describe it. The turmoil in the culture. There's no getting away from it. I see it as a professor teaching my classes. My students are very anxious about the future. They do not believe the way I did when I went through the university that I might not get the job of my dreams, but by going to the university and getting my degree, I was sure of a decent job, a decent income. I could get married. I could think about having children, all of that. My students today, and I teach in a perfectly normal, average university situation here in New York City where I live and work, and my students are light years from that perception. They do not expect to get a very good job at all. They expect to cobble together a little thing over here and a little thing over there to live in a fundamental condition of precarity. And I think what you're seeing is the reflection of the fact that we have a very, very insecure job market. Companies have been outsourcing, relocating jobs out of the country. They have been bringing immigrants in to replace American workers, American-born workers, and they've been continuing automation. I mean, my students' mentality is we're all about to, and this is a joke, but you don't have to be a Freudian to understand what the joke is telling you. The joke is AI is eating our future, and we are going to have to survive in an environment that does that. And I think the truth of it is that corporations are investing in AI. Whether that's a reasonable decision, that's another matter. I'm not so sure at all. But they are, and they're pumping money into AI, and they are resisting Mr. Trump's efforts to reshape the global economy. The bottom line is the job situation is both fluid and negative in terms of how people are reacting to it. And I think those statistics reflect all of that. Finally, there's a particular factor, but I don't want to get lost in that. The pandemic was a tremendous shock to the American working class on many levels. But one of them was not wanting to have the kind of work life that they had had before, finding that return to their job wasn't really feasible, discovering that their employer had taken the advantage of the pandemic to try very hard to get 4 people to do what they used to have 6 people doing, that the conditions of their work were different. They then quit their job, they look for something else, they don't find it. And if I really had time, I would talk to you also about the immense explosion of illegal or off the grid, might be a better way to put it, jobs that young people are increasingly taking, which also impact those statistics that you see in the chart. I am among a majority of American economists, left wing, right wing, and center, who do not know anymore whether we can take seriously the statistics coming from the government. What was done to the Bureau of Labor Statistics a few weeks ago when Mr. Trump fired the lady who was at the head of it because he didn't like the revisions to earlier months this year, the very downward revisions in the labor market that you're referring to, has led us to wonder as a profession whether we are now going to have to develop our own statistical series, if we even can do that, that we could rely on, because the politicization that Mr. Trump undertook really makes all of this very, very, very questionable. Is it possible that the GDP took a bit of a turn up as opposed to something else? Yes, that is possible. There may have been some specific events that provoked that. But whether or not that's real, that will be determined under a number of scenarios about whether it continues or whether whistleblowers come forward and let us know what more and more of us are wondering about, which is the nature of these data themselves. Well, I wish I could give you an answer, but the honest answer is more durable uncertainty. If there's anything that Mr. Trump's economic policy, and I'm using that word loosely, if there's anything that policy has introduced that is really novel and new, it is radical uncertainty in our economy. We do not know whether we do or do not have a tariff, whether the tariff is higher or lower, whether the tariff will go into effect in 2 days, in 12 days, in 50 days, in 90 days. And therefore, we do not know, no matter what is done today, and no matter what is said about what is done today, whether that will apply. So, for example, the argument that what his goal is to bring manufacturing back to the United States, well, then he's the worst enemy of that objective. Because if there's anything that will prevent a corporation from undertaking the expenditure and the time lost and the profit lost to move a factory from China to America, from Peru to America, from India to America, it will be uncertainty. Why come to the United States, of all places, if the tariff that protects the American market won't be there in 3 months or 6 months? The herky-jerky up and down of the last 8 months is an object lesson in what you cannot rely on, and therefore they're not coming. It's a joke. Statements, we will invest over the next 10 years, hundreds of billions. I love that. That's useless. No vice president of a corporation is going to risk his or her corporate future by pushing for a move that could be ridiculous 3 months from now in terms of what has changed. And we are, one more point on this, we are at the very beginning of the world's reaction to what is going on. These tariffs are, to put it in simple English, the demand of the United States for tribute. If you're a foreign company or country and you want to sell into the American market, you're going to have to pay tribute at the gate. That's what a tariff is. To get into the US market, a rich market, because of our history, you're going to have to pay an entrance fee. And that's what we're going to charge you. Every country, every corporation that had any kind of export market in the United States will now be reacting. They're going to look for alternative export markets not afflicted by tariffs. They're going to look for ways to get around the tariff, to move product from their country, which has a high tariff, through some other country, which has a low tariff or no tariff at all. All of these reactions are the tip of the iceberg. They're going to go into different products depending on where the markets are. No company coming here can figure out all of those variables. There are too many, and they're all changing each other. Therefore, you can't predict what market you actually would have coming to the United States if any part of that market is an export. Therefore, the uncertainty is now compounded by all of the reactions that are going to be taken. I recently spent a little bit of time in Montreal, Canada, and I went there to ask people, which I did, everyone I could find, from somebody I met in an elevator to someone I had at a restaurant. What are you thinking? And when the dust cleared about their feeling, which I can best describe with the English word betrayal, they feel as though they were loyal allies of the United States who have been betrayed. Their word, repeated over and over again. Well, they are figuring out, I talked to a number of businesses there, they're now figuring out their strategy. And they're asking about reorienting their entire economy to Europe, to China, to India, and on and on and on. They don't know exactly where they're going to go. But here's what I can tell you. The American economy, including our job situation and our GDP, will be shaped by how the rest of the world reacts. We have never seen this before. A government that uses tariffs like a club, bashing this country today. It's Mexico and Canada. Next week it's India. Next week it's China. Next week it's Vietnam. And on what grounds? Here's where me as an economist, David, I got to tell you, it really does blow my mind. I see my president pointing to a deficit. The United States buys more from Vietnam, for example, than we sell to them. Of course, that's true. But Mr. Trump sees that as a sign that we're being cheated. Holy mackerel, we're a rich country. Rich countries buy more than they sell to poor countries. And you know why? Because they're poor. No one put a gun to the head of the Americans who bought all those Vietnamese products. And I just picked Vietnam as an example. But blaming the country and then using that to hit the world with tariffs, we are becoming, economically speaking, I'm not talking politics here, but economically, we are a rogue nation in the sense that people do not understand what in the world is going on and what is going to happen. And they are figuring out ways to disconnect from the United States so that the uncertainty doesn't bite them where it hurts. The answer to the last part first. It takes time. It always takes time. A tariff, even one that was imposed, end of story. We don't have that. The analogy with Smoot-Hawley doesn't work because we weren't in a Great Depression already, and we weren't up and downing it and delaying it in this chaotic way of the last 8 months. So it really is a different story. But here's the most important kind of role. The basic argument of the people who connect the Great Depression with Smoot-Hawley is not that it caused the Great Depression, but it worsened it. The Great Depression needed a tremendous stimulus. And what you were doing with Smoot-Hawley was shutting down the world economy, having every country turn in on itself. This was a very dangerous way to deal with a problem that should have been understood right at the beginning was global in nature. 1929 October, when everything falls apart, it falls apart in Britain, it falls apart in Germany, falls apart in France, falls apart in the United States. Hello, it's an international event. And the logic that people want us to learn from that is if you have an international economic breakdown, you better come up with an international solution. Otherwise, which is what happened in the 30s, every country tries to solve its problem at the expense of the other, with the net result of making it worse for everybody. That's what's going on now. That is a similarity. But we are at the early stages. We might be further along if Mr. Trump had imposed a tariff, whatever it was, and declared it a done deal. That would have horrified the rest of the world, but what Mr. Trump has done has horrified the rest of the world anyway. This weekend, there'll be a meeting in Beijing of the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, Mr. Modi, Mr. Xi Jinping, and Putin will all be there together with many of their BRICS allies. And we're seeing the coming together of the rest of the world, and you can bet they will be discussing how they can help each other evade and avoid both the sanctions and the tariffs, which by the way, increasingly resemble one another. In other words, tariffs are being used like sanctions to punish the enemy. And I want to remind Americans not to lose sight of the most important statistic of all. The population of the United States is 4.5% of this planet. And the population of India, China, Russia, and the BRICS is well over 50% of the people on this planet. It is not a sustainable economic strategy for a mouse to be hitting tariffs against an elephant. If you add up the GDP, not just of the United States, but of the entire G7, that's the United States, Japan, Canada, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy. You add that up, it comes to about 28% of global GDP. If you do the same thing for the BRICS, it's 35%. I got news for the world. The big, rich core of the world economy is no longer the West. It is already the East, and that gap is growing. You can pretend that hasn't happened, but that didn't make it go away. any more than a 2-year-old that puts her fingers in front of her face will no longer have to face the scary doggy that's barking a few feet away. America is caught up in a kind of denial of what's going on. And it comes to this question we began with, cherry picking your statistics to figure out, how can I say something to myself that makes me feel better? Okay, look at the stock market. It's doing really well. It is. I'm not going to dispute that. I watch that. That's an index I'm interested in. But when you put it together with the other ones that we're talking about as we converse, you begin to get a picture of a society that is in all kinds of difficulty. And for me, Donald Trump and what he does is a reflection, is an effect of a society in trouble, kind of desperately reaching out for new ways to try to constrain what is unfolding.